Welcome everybody to San Diego HistCon Second Front and this superb panel that we've assembled here today of Spanish conflict uh, game designers with a wide variety of gaming experience and design types. And the object of this panel is to explore a little bit the different perspective that Spanish game designers bring to conflict simulations as opposed to their Anglo-Saxon peers and friends and colleagues, because the experience of Western history from a Spanish perspective is a bit different, I think. And there's a narrative that runs in most Americans' heads about how all of history came to pass, and I think the narrative that runs in Spanish heads runs a little differently. And I think that the Spain has entered the hobby in such a major way from almost nowhere a couple of years ago to having both on the design side amazing designs, amazing publishers that didn't exist a few years ago, and fantastic artists that are kind of dominating the war game hobby all of a sudden. And so that's exciting. And the other exciting part is that this perspective that Spanish designers are bringing to our hobby are telling some old stories in new ways and new stories that we really haven't been exposed to. So it's just, I think, a fantastic development all around. And I am lucky to have been able to assemble these fantastic designers from Spain and one refugee in Chicago to talk a little bit about their work. I will just ask everybody to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about your most recent design, and I'll start in the order that you appear on my screen. So Francisco Ronco first.
Okay, thank you so much, Jason. Okay, I am Francisco Ronco and I am been designing games for several decades. I have five titles published, and my most recent will be this Castel Nuovo 1539. This is a game in the wake of Santa Cruz 1797 and von Manstein's Triumph. That is a card-driven game with blocks and a very tense and very full of alternatives game. I prefer designing operational games, but in this case, I design a siege game because siege games are not so popular in our hobby. And I think siege warfare is very, very interesting. And I prefer designing cardboard simulators. I put the players on the seats of historical actors that have to take decisions with the tools on their reach. This game is about this, an obscure siege on a Dalmatian coast in the 16th century.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm excited about it. And my son and I love Santa Cruz, so I'm excited to get my hands on it. Fran.
Hello. I'm 45 years old. I've been designing. I'm not the most prolific of this board. I've been designing since 15 years ago, and I only have a published game, which is Polis. But I've been designing another game during 12 years, as we were talking before we went live. And those are my two only games. One centered on the ancient Greece in the 5th century BC. And this game is about the World War II, a 3 game. We're now working on the 2-player variant. I can now, after 12 years, I can say it's finished. I'm a perfectionist, working from a monster game to a more streamlined game. And now I think it's finished, the 3, which is the main game, the 3-player version. I'm very happy with the game, very, 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 very happy. The players who played the game some years ago, even 8 years ago, like Paco Ronco, saw a completely different game. Then it was a monster. So I'm not prolific. I enjoy designing games for several years. So I'm a weird person here, different from all of you.
Well, your perfectionism shows, I think, very much in Polis. Although I do think you should try and get your timelines down. If it takes longer than the war to design, then maybe you should speed up slightly.
I'm not able to.
Ivan,
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Ivan Prat, and my first game published, not the first game design, is the Case of the Catalans, published in 2014 for the 300th anniversary of the National Day Catalonia. I was lucky to get this design published, but I had design that was first. I faced in 2011. I faced a year off of work, and I wanted to test myself if I could design a game. I have this game design, but still looking for publishing. And 2 years ago, it was by Snafu Design. I published the 12 Hours at Maleme. This is a tactical game based on the first day and the fight over the airfield of Maleme in Crete. So the first game was it's not truly war game. It's a mid war game, mid hero game. It's in the line, very different from Polis, but in this line that divides the euro and the war game. And it was a multiplayer game. Was full of negotiation, and this last game is tactical one, tense, 2 hours, two players. It's very different, and from now I'm very happy for the results of Maleme. Also, I'm working in Snafu, not as designer, just I design one game from them, but I'm working on as developer alongside with Oscar and Mark. And that's all.
awesome, thank you. Andoni.
Hello, my name is Andoni Oribe. I'm the co-designer of New Cold War, 1999-2019, published by Buka Simulations 2 months ago. This is my first game. Okay, I'm quite new in this hobby as a player and as a designer. Okay, and my colleague is Igor Plaza, that is now in Madrid, in Alcalá, showing our game in Basel Forever, Icon in Spain. And yeah, for the moment we are trying to finish with this game because we are creating some new materials, asking all people in media. But our idea is to continue with some modern conflicts as our game.
Yeah, I'm super excited about your game, and whenever people ask me about a Twilight Struggle Cold War sequel, I always say, well, it looks like somebody's maybe going to do a better job than I would have, so you should check out Andoni's design.
We will.
Let me kick off by exploring one of the areas where I think the view of Anglo-American history and the narrative that we think of might differ a bit from Spain, and related, Francisco, to kind of the Spanish take on the Eastern Front, the Spanish take on World War II. Like, when does it begin? Does it begin with the Spanish Civil War? Does it begin with Poland? And the interesting experience that the Spanish people had of the Civil War, and then World War II following up on it. Does it change how you look on World War II? And Fran, since you also have a World War II design, which apparently included occupying Spain at some point, maybe you can weigh in on this as well.
My game is a sandbag. We can call it a sandbag because you can change history. It's not a track that you follow and you recreate with some slight difference the World War. The beginning of the game is I'm not original in that. Is the summer of 1939. We may start with a Sino-Japanese war. I think the World War started then in the mid 30s, but the game cut short that time and begins just in the summer before all exploded. But the game may end with no war, so it's a rare game. It's a strange game. As a my personal view is always giving some degree of liberty bigger than other games. So you feel like these are the rules. No, no, you have to free your mindset. So you're managing the country you're managing, and you're free to do what you want. If you are one side, you will. If you are German, you will have to wage war more heavily or more present than if you are the allies. But you can make peace with all countries, and you still won. So my personal view is just that. I think the Spanish designer, we began designing after all those old war games from the US, like CSPI and Avalon Hill. So we mix some Eurogame facts with the war games, and not taking all those heavy classic with CRTs and all those. We don't have those that heritage. We don't have that experience. So we are designing since not so long ago, and we take a fresh approach to the war game design.
Agreed. Francisco,
Yes.
what?
Sorry.
Oh no, same question, but you have some experience also specifically on the East Front, where Spain sent volunteer the Blue Legion,
Yes.
Blue Division, I should say.
I can speak on some aspects of your question. The first one will be that in Spain, the Spanish Civil War is seen as a separate conflict from World War II because political issues mostly, and even personal implication. Maybe my grandparents were in that war, so. But most of the Spanish players usually look at Eastern Front games and World War II in the East, and they wanted to see them there. Sorry, on those games, the Blue Division, as you talk. Yeah, we sent a division to fight against communism. So, and they were very well. They did
So they fought well,
very well,
Yeah.
very well, because the Germans didn't have a good opinion of our troops and our soldiers when they went to Germany to train. But just during the training, Germans were astonished of the fast that the Spanish troops get accustomed to the new material, to the orders and tactics and discipline. And when they were sent to the Eastern Front, usually the high command, the German high command, was praising the Spanish troops, and the Spanish troops intervened in several battles that were very, very hard fought, and they never broke, and they always were put by the German higher command on hot spots to stop Soviet offensive. They spent the whole war on the north, on the siege of Leningrad and the Army Group North. So games about the Spanish Blue Division are very few. There's only very few of them. One of the most known is the TCS from Dean Essig that is called Black Wednesday, about the Battle of Krasny Bor. Okay, some of their descendants are now in Spain. I have a friend that his grandparent went to the east. This can be an influence for designing games. I don't think so, because no Spanish have designed a game about the Spanish Blue Division nor the Army Group North. I think one in Alea, the magazine Alea in Spain, I think they publish a game about one of the offensive. I think the Volkov offensive, and I think in that game there has to be reflected, but I don't know the game. So, and it was designed by a Spanish designer. And militarily, really, the Spanish Civil War was not Second World War, because both armies fought with their doctrine and manuals from French, because the Spanish army of the 20s and 30s has the material, the doctrine, and the tactics of the French army, because they saw that the French won the First World War. So they said, oh, the French are good, so we are going to copy, but poorer. We have the same doctrine, but with less money. So instead of 6 mortars per battalion, we only have 2. Instead of 12 heavy machine guns, only 2, and something like this. So the Spanish Civil War was more like the First World War, but with less material, with less cannons, less everything, and more guts and grenades. Very, very, very often combats were resolved on close combat because you don't have the firepower to expel the enemy from a spokes position. You have to take it by assault. And I have designed a game about a battle of the Civil War that is going to be released in 2 years, maybe, that is like this and like Santa Cruz, 1797, that I will call November Crisis, because it's about the last attempt of the rebels to enter the capital, Madrid, the Battle of the Universitary Campus in November of 1936. And you will see in that game that both hands of cards, both decks, are very similar, because all of them were trying and fought with the same doctrine. But you will lack a lot of firepower, so you will resort to close combat and assault very often. So you will suffer a lot of losses, because running against machine gun fire is not a good thing for human beings. And the relationship between the Spanish Civil War and the Second World War is most construct we did in perspective, because Germans were on one side, Soviets were on the other. Later, they were one against the other during the big war. But during the Spanish Civil War, the Spanish Civil War was fought mainly out of that big context. And you can see that in the great game about the Spanish Civil War, Crusade and Revolution, from David Gomez Reyoso, that you are fighting the war and things from abroad take some influence, but it's not decisive. You have to fight your war on your Iberian soil. I don't know if I have asked you questions.
No, that was excellent. I learned quite a bit in that answer, honestly. Thank you. Ivan, your game design on a subject obviously that is of interest to people in Catalonia, but it definitely has I mean, even its very title is a little bit of a reminder of English perfidy and sort of, you know, the outcomes of the Spanish or the War of Spanish Succession, as far as England and your Western allies are concerned, are very different than the outcomes as far as people in Catalonia are concerned. And so this seems like a perfect example of somewhere where Spanish lived experience is different than American history books.
Well, yeah, I can see that you say it that way. The thing is, the national boundaries in all from Middle Ages or from the Roman Empire to 20th century maybe were ever changing in Europe. I don't know if you are used to see national boundaries change so fast. If you can do it, you can do this sort of videos that the boundaries are keeping changing through years, and it's a thing difficult to see for the Americans. The boundaries of America are very fixed. You created some boundaries as you expect as you go to the West, but they're fixed. And in Europe's history, those boundaries are intermixed with the boundaries of religion, with the boundaries of languages, and with the boundaries of dynasties. And this is a moment in Europe where the dynasties rule over the national boundaries, and there's a conflict to redraw all the boundaries in Europe, prevent some boundaries and make different ones. I can see it. It's strange. It may be strange, that change, and also to view the dynasties to supersede the countries. So you have the Louis XIV that wants his grandson to rule another country, and in some ways you can say that he buys his country for his grandson. There's nothing to do with national boundaries. So he gets and the others that the alliance or the act try to prevent this new superpower in Europe, and this is a recurring conflict over the years of redrawing all the borders of all the Europe. It's constant. We are used to this. We learned this from school. It's normal for us.
The United States have territories like Wyoming. This is almost a perfect square. So it's the strangest. It's a completely different world. We've been mixed religions, ideologies. We've been mixed ever since we've been mixing for 5,000 years. Everything in Europe.
It definitely is an odd concept to the United States, because as you say, our own national boundaries were relatively stable. Of course, we kept adding states and taking Indian land, but as pertains to Canada and Mexico, less so. And I actually had a very direct experience of this. I was taking a train ride in Italy through the Alps, and we're still in Italy, and suddenly all the building signs were in German. And I'm like, oh, yes, of course, this was part of Austria at one point, but it's weird. We think of Italy as we understand it today, or we think of Spain as we understand it today, and all of those things, as you say, Ivan, are, as far as European history, kind of relatively new, and not, nothing is quite so static.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is, I guess, unfortunately, what the people in Eastern Europe are dealing with even now, since all of their borders are essentially no one's border there is older than 40 years.
Yes.
Speaking of which, Andoni, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about Spanish perspectives on modern conflicts. Again, in American eyes, we're always the hero in this narrative, and perhaps you have a slightly different point of view on the emerging world.
Okay, in our case, we are from Spain. We are from the European Union. So I think in our game we have to build the 30 years that covers the game, and show the most important events of these 30 years. So we have to choose them. Okay, and I think that if we are from US, China, Russia, the other three powers of the game, I think that the perspective was totally different, because I think these countries have a more sense of belonging, okay, more some kind of nationalism, okay. But here in Europe, I think that the European community is something that is not really like a sense of us. Okay?
Artificial.
Yeah, and there is even some great opposition nowadays to European Union in a lot of countries or in several political parties. So I think that our perspective here is little more objective, I can say, because okay, or at least is my impression, because maybe if I am a Chinese designer, I think that game was totally different that our game. But okay.
Yeah, no doubt. I think that a or a Chinese designer might give us a very different point of view on future conflict, and I personally would love to see what they have to say. But do you think current events are helping to change European perspectives on what their role in the world needs to be?
Yeah, I think for sure here there is I think all governments and even a lot of people are changing their minds or recent regarding the recent events that are affecting us in Ukraine, and we are in the opposite place of Europe. Okay, so I think that Spanish we live these events with some distance, okay, or some physical distance, okay,
Right.
but yeah, it's for our game is like the last 5 years is like a lot of happen in geopolitics, so it's like we have to create a new game each month or each Sunday, okay, so
Yes.
we have a lot of material maybe for the future.
Yeah, you needed release so you can stop designing new events. Now you need a Musk Trump card, I guess. Fran, expansions, always expansions. Fran, you talked a little bit about this marriage of European, or let's just call it German Euro game design with conflict simulations, and it's obviously part of how you design Polis. Do you? We usually talk about it in terms of like how you start a design. Like, do you begin by modeling something, or do you begin with a mechanic? And the notion in American design, war game design, is that you start with something you're trying to model, and then you make mechanics fit rather than the other way around. What is your kind of approach, given that you're working in some hybrid space between European and American style design? What's your approach when you begin to tackle a subject?
The mechanics are born from which books I'm reading, which which text I'm studying. So I began studying the context and the historical context for 1 or 1.5 years, and then began to think which things of that time should be represented in the game. And I don't think about mechanics until I have a frame of the game. I don't start with the mechanics. I can't start with the mechanics. I have to fall in love with the concept of the games before I start with the mechanics. So if I think I will have to mark an example. If I think in the Proxeno, the mechanic of the Proxeno is created from what the Proxeno is. He bribes with silver. He cannot be captured in the foreign cities. He is in danger in their own cities and the neutral cities. So the mechanic of the Proxeno is born from the context. So I think I designed the games from a very American way. So beginning with the context, not the mechanics, which is the German way. So
Yeah.
it's a Wiro, or my only two designs can be called Wiros. So we have a mix of war game and Euros. But myself, I don't play war games. I only play Euros, but I read only text of military context. So my mind is mixed with all the military podcast and text. And my free time, my my the games I play are only Euros. So so that's my creative way to express that mix is the games I create.
It's
I understand entirely.
sorry, it's wonderful because I am the opposite. So I play mostly war games, and I start designing through the mechanics. So my design style is more German. I start with the mechanics, but I play war games. It's just the opposite.
That is
But
amazing.
but by design, it seems that it's the opposite. But it's not that way. um,
Uh,
I don't. I'm sorry what I want to say, but I dislike, for example, Paths of Glory. I played Paths of Glory. I said that's not my style of game, but I love Virgin Queen
mhm,
because there is a narrative. I
mhm,
dislike Path of Glory, but we have the reinforcement and the gun of August, and I didn't like that I am creating a narrative while I was playing. But Virgin Queen is exactly the opposite. So I
mhm,
love Virgin Queen, and here I
mhm.
stand.
Interesting.
In our case, was as Fran, we start with the geopolitical context, and after that, we start with the mechanics.
Um, Francisco, you have a slightly different point of view because you have been working in you design operational war games and classical war games as most of us would understand it. But I'm curious if there are things. Do you have any critique of the way classical war games have been designed, and are there specific things that you alter in your designs that are a little bit reflective of things that you think you have learned either in your reading or just in terms of making better game design?
I think both, because I think that my way of designing war games is first of all defining the position of the player. Who is the player? The player is a king, the player is a general, the player is a sergeant. Who is the player? That's the point. Because I design one cell designs, one cell models. I took this term from the Wargame Research Group in the UK, that they say that designs can be of two kinds. One cell, you put the player in one point, in one cell, and everything that is below or
Mhm.
above that level of resolution cannot be in the hands of the player. Can maybe he can ask the high command for reinforcements, but if the card they don't arrive, the high command didn't attend your request. Okay, or you can make multi cells. Multi cells, you are the king, the general, the soldier, and the oxen, or everything. You are everything. So I prefer the first one. So when we refer to the classical wargaming, to the most common, the classical X and counter games, I critique of the classical X and counter games that they give you too many options. Unreal, you have too many information. You can react with certainty. So you know how many X's your tanks will move. This is totally unreal. You never know. I have read a lot about military men in real combat. I know a lot of military men, and even in peace maneuvers, you take those. You were sent to take that hill, but you were waiting because you were told that tanks will arrive, and they never arrived, so you never took the hill. So it's so common. It's so common. That's confusion. So in my designs, usually I put first the place where the player will be seated, and then I define the zone where his decisions, her decisions will take influence. And I decide what is out of his reach. Out of the player's reach can be a lot of things. So they have to be introducing the game by some mechanic way, some random events, some cards, something, die rolls. And what you were asking about, the critique about the older games, the classical X and counter games, maybe. I think my main point of critique is that you are not really depicting the place of command. Taking command means taking decisions with half information in a changing environment that may be obsolete your decision where the decision took the field. So that's the point. My designs are always about it: chaos, command, and decisions, and
The
uncertainty.
Uncertainty,
Yes,
exactly.
uncertainty.
Ivan, I'm curious. Your first, well, not your first design, your first published design, I should say, is about the Spanish War of Succession. There are a lot of there's a lot of Spanish military history that seems to be left on the table, and even left on the table by Spanish designers. I'm curious why you think that might be, and whether you or any of our other panelists are going to fix it by giving us more games about Spanish conflict.
Okay, I'll try to answer without offending anyone. Okay. but the thing is,
Go on.
even yeah, even from inside Spain, it's not everyone is happy with the performance of our history or the history of our army. So there are many, let's say, gray spots for not using the black. So it's only gray. But I think it would be okay to produce more games like Paco said before about the Blue Vision on Russia. But we have to be aware that this the focal point of this game was a division that many people here in Spain will think that it's not good to design good about these events. So it's tricky. It's very tricky. We are not at peace with our history or with the history of our army. We are not at
Me,
peace.
yes.
And
Me, yes.
sorry.
Me, yes. I am at peace with my history and my.
No. I said no. Yeah, sure. But I say this may be the cause that not many people are daring to produce more games about the military history in Spain. I think it may be the motive. Not everyone will be at ease with some designs, so they cannot separate just the military history from other political facts, and they should be. So, for example, in my game in Maleme, the Nazis and the Commonwealth, there is no problem playing with the Germans. There's no problem. But in Spain, it's not that easy. The Civil War, as you said before, our grandparents fought in the Civil War. So it's not healed. It's not healed. And maybe you can do some games about previous eras. So you go to the conquistadores and then you find another. It's not easy to make a game about conquistadores because they were doing bad things, and it's preferring not to do a game about these events. It's easier for an Anglo-Saxon to do a game about the conquistadores, maybe about the Spanish conquistadores, I said. But and they did, and this is a famous game. But if a Spanish designer do a game about the conquistadores, it will be always the disjunctive. If okay, what story should I present in my game? Plain history with. I don't know if you understand me, but I I praise very much the games by Joel Tope and Navajo and Comancheria, Navajo Wars and Comancheria. They are daring games, and there you have the Americans playing the bad guys, and it's a good thing. So it's an intent of healing this period. I don't know if we are trying to heal anything, or you have to expect for one generation or more. I don't know.
That's super interesting. I'm curious, Andoni, along those same lines. I'm working on something in South Asia, like a Twilight Struggle sequel for South Asia, and it's essentially impossible to talk about India and Pakistan and what happens in that region without kind of contending with the role of imperialism, which we give a little bit. It's in Twilight Struggle, but we give it a little bit of a short shrift. I'm curious if I'm curious what you think about how how Spain contends with its role in imperialism, and if that kind of impacts what design subjects are allowable. Like, for instance, is it easier for you to do a game about future conflict than it would be for you to do a game about, the revolutions in South America, South and Central America?
Okay, this is a hard question. Okay, okay. Do you mean the Spanish imperialism or?
Yes. So, given role or Spain's role in imperialism in the world and its history, does it impact what you think you can design, first of all, and does it influence kind of the way you look at modern conflict, given that history?
I never think about it because in our case we are more focused in the American imperialism and the anti-imperialist trend in different places in the world.
Wait,
That
what's
in
American imperialism?
sorry.
I said, what's American imperialism? I'm just kidding.
Okay, I suppose that you are joking. Okay.
No.
Yes, but in our case, for example, I was thinking in other aspects that, for example, we design trying to be objective, as I said, but I suppose that our feelings, our political background affects. So, for example, in our game, we have some controversial events. For example, we are talking about the rise of the far right in Europe. So I try to treat this with an objective view, but I suppose that my feelings affects to this, to how I represent this in the game. So yeah, I think that all of these kinds of issues affects the designer. Concerning your question about the I can reply because I never think about how this affects to me. As I said, I'm really new in this world, so okay, sorry.
All in good
Jason,
time.
sorry, Jason, I think
Yes,
that
sir.
there is a huge military history of Spain that has to be represented on the tables. And we are just beginning because, as you said at the beginning, Spain has entered the international scene on wargaming and historical gaming. Okay, I released my first game in 2008, but in the last 15 years, there has been a surge, a total surge. So we will see in the next year a lot of games about a lot of topics on Spain history, and I think that is mm, that's the option is in the future. We are now are thinking about what to represent in those games in the future. But I also think that when we use the word imperialism, if we use this to reflect the Portuguese or Spanish Empire, the 16th century, it's a mistake, I think, because they were not really an empire in the British or American empires. Okay, because America was not a colony for Spain. Where they were provinces.
You broke up a little. Oh, you're still stuck, I guess.
We've
Was the
lost
Portuguese.
Paco.
Or the Portuguese. He talked about the imperialist Portuguese and they broke the connection.
Well, we haven't healed the conflicts inside Spain as we may think. They're not healed at all. And I agree
had
with
some.
Ivan in that.
I'm here.
I got
Yeah.
that sense while I was there. The Spanish Civil War seemed very still present in a weird way. And
Yep.
to Andoni's point about contending with the rise of the far right in Spain, I just talking to people in Spain, it didn't sound like the far right ever quite went away in Spain. There were always people who defended elements of the dictatorship, and were thought it did good things. And I'm not even here to say they're right or wrong. It was just still a debate that was occurring.
It's a can of worms.
Yeah.
They are just evolved into something else,
Yeah, that's
something
right.
different, with a new facade, with a new kind of speaking, not so just hiding their intents and their thoughts, their minds.
I will say
We've lost Paco. We've lost Paco.
yeah.
I
As soon
think.
as he did mention that his internet connection wasn't too terribly good there in Chicago, so hopefully he'll get back on in a second. I will say that I think there is an interesting thing that maybe you gentlemen will observe over the course with Spanish design and new Spanish publishers and designers. Even in the United States, there were certain topics that there were taboo initially. Like, we didn't have a lot of games and no good games really about Vietnam for a very long time. We didn't have Ivan mentioned Comancheria. We had very few games that dealt with our conflicts with Native Americans and some of our genocidal tendencies and aspects of our own history. It took time before those subjects, people kind of figured out ways, how can we talk about this subject in make it a game, not make it offensive, make it educational, make it accurate to the history, and accomplish all of those things in a game design. It took a long time to figure that out. Underground Railroad, which isn't really a war game, but definitely a historical game about, I should say, freedom. The game is called Freedom, but the game about the Underground Railroad. There we go. Francisco's back, hopefully.
Hello.
We're glad to have you back, Francisco. I was just talking about this tendency that we had in the United States, as we developed sort of language and a capacity to analyze our own history and come to terms with it. We started to see historical game designs on those subjects. Like Vietnam, initially there were no war games on Vietnam. Now we have a number of very good war games on Vietnam. We didn't have very many war games dealing with our conflicts with Native Americans in the United States. Now we have a number of good games on that subject. And I hope and I expect actually that Spain will go through the same kind of slow, hey, we figured out a way to talk about what happened in South and Central America, and the history's good, and it's an interesting
And
game.
North.
Yes, and North.
And North,
yes, exactly.
because mostly of North America was Spain also.
That's right.
Yes, and I think one problem of the English-speaking designers is that they rely on English-speaking bibliography, and English-speaking historians only read most of them only read English. We have a huge amount of archives in Spain in Spanish. So you need to go to a Spanish bibliography also, because when you represent, I don't know if you know, but I think yes, a series, Musket and Pike from GMT. Wow,
Yeah.
they don't have. Ben Hull has not used just a single Spanish source, and we the Spanish invented that kind of combat, Musket and Pike, at the end of the 15th century, at the beginning of the 16th. So how can you do something like this without resorting to the original sources? Oh, it's strange, but it's common because Americans don't speak other languages, mostly of them. So
we design lazily. I'm afraid you're right. And obviously, Spanish tercios are an incredibly important evolution in
Yes.
all of warfare, but certainly that era in particular.
Of course.
Um,
So I did my Castelnuovo, and I will do more games about the Spanish tercios.
I'm excited to see it. I think it'll be great for everybody eventually. Let's, if you don't mind, Andoni, we'll start with you. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what you're working on and where you think your next design might go?
Okay, the more obvious thing is try to continue the game with an expansion, because we finished the game in 2019 with the pandemic. Okay, because for us was very difficult to add every single new geopolitical event that appears during this time. So for balancing the game was impossible to add every 6 months more events. So this is the obvious, but we have one dream. Maybe is try to make something in the line of this game, but only with the Africa events. So focusing in the geopolitical in Africa, but I think from the 2000 to nowadays, because I think there
Very
is
interesting. Very, very
is
interesting.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So I think we have the mechanics. So it's like make a new Cold War Africa, for example, like take benefit from this work of 6-7 years, but the sources
you-
and the study will be really really hard.
10th. Yeah.
I think you
But
will need a more military system, because you will have to reflect a lot of combat, a lot.
Yeah.
yeah, we want to show the importance of, for example, the natural resources in the conflicts. All of this is really really important right now about the ports, the new railways, every infrastructure that Chinese are building now. Okay, this there is a mix of influence from the four power that we have in the game. So, but yeah, okay, it's a dream. So okay,
It's a great topic, and I encourage you highly. Although honestly, if it were Fran, it would take another 18 to 25 years, I guess. So better you, Andoni. Fran, what are you working on?
I'm working on I would say a World War II game, but it's not a World War II game. It's a game between 1939 and 1945, and it may be a World War II or a completely different topic. So the players start. It's a 3 and 2 player game. We have finished the game maybe 2 months ago, and I may say it's finished. I'm very happy with the result. I've been simplifying the game from a monster game that we were talking before we went live with Paco Ronco. He tested the previous version 8 years ago, and it was a monster game for about 6 hours, and now it's a 2 or 3 hours game, and is so streamlined so that the Pacific War is just a track, just a track with the US and the Japan. So it's a but Europe is a map, and the North Africa is the map is the Europe and the North Africa theater. So it's a sandbox game. I'm very, very, very happy with the game. It's a CDG game, but with it's a game that everyone's play the game say, I don't know nothing similar to that game. I was expecting a Triumph and Tragedy, a Cataclysm, but it's something completely different. So it's going to be a game that is going to be disliked by the people who like Euros and the people who like war games. So it's going to be a very disliked game.
Well, that sounds amazing to me. I love a good grand strategy game, and that's a fantastic setting. And sandbox games are always fun to play with, I think. So that's exciting. Francisco?
Okay, we will in Velica release first the game from David Gomez Reyoso, An Impossible War, and then after this, the first of my game that will be released, I'm not working on them because they are already finished, will be Volume 4 for the Campaign Commander series, the series with Road to Stalingrad, Coral Sea, and Panic Island in his wake. The new game is about the Tertius, is about the White Sea, the Mediterranean, the Central and Eastern Mediterranean, during a decade of the 16th century, from 1565 to 1674. The Ottomans on one side, Venetians and Spanish on the other. That will be released at the beginning of the next year. And then I will resurrect the Fast Action Battle series, because I designed one for GMT and they discarded the whole series. And I have an agreement with the author, the original author. So I will focus on the Eastern Front. And I will begin with my FAB Dubno 41, the Battle of Brady Dubno in the summer of 1941. And now I am working not on a game from me, but and that game I told you before of the record, I think, that is about the war against Napoleon in the Iberia Peninsula, that is going to be called The Disasters of War. The designer is a Danish guy, Rasmus Larsen, and I am acting as the developer. And I am working hard for finishing that game to be released by my own company also, as the other two, next year.
Fantastic. Ivan?
Well, we are in the final art of the Case of Napoleon. So it's a spin-off. It's a spin-off of the Case of the Catalans. The idea started 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, when we talked in Barcelona. I don't know if you remember.
I do.
The other conflicts that get up with the system and the mechanics of the Case of the Catalans, and the game is finished. Is finished for the last 3 or 4 years. We are the final art, and then deliver the files and wait for the production line. Don't know, maybe next year, at the end of this year. Don't know the pipeline of the beer, but the game is finished, and it took a long time. It's more hard to test it because there are more variables in this game than the previous one. I think it's more fun. It's more fun because people can change sides. In the Spanish succession, the blocks were fixed, and there you can change sides, as Austria did, and Russia did, and Prussia did, everyone did, but the English. But we are in final art production.
Well, that's super exciting. I'm glad it's finally getting its well-deserved sequel. One last question before we leave out. What's on your table? Andoni, what are you playing besides your own designs, of course, which we're all doing tragically?
I didn't play nothing about my own game since 7 years ago. But now, next week is the World Championship of Twilight Struggle in Spain. 1
Yes,
hour
it is.
ago from my city in Vitoria. I'm trying to to train a little bit with the app. Okay, so because I'm going to go to know these people and to try to show my game to these people.
Great.
Okay, because it's our public. Okay, so
Yeah.
but this is what I'm doing now.
Well, good. Don't embarrass yourself. Those guys are sharks, but it should be a fun time, I'm sure. Fran, what terrifying Euro are you playing? Flip 7? What are you?
Well, I hate playing my games. So I following Andoni what Andoni said. I hate playing my games, my designs. I only see fails in my designs, so I hate playing my designs. So I'm slow designing, and I'm beginning to play old games like Samurai from Nietzsche and St. Petersburg, and old German board
Like
games,
classic Euros, yeah.
classic Euros, but from the 19s. So
Yeah. I think that was the high watermark. Honestly, I think some of their best design was there.
Yeah.
And
I think Samurai. I'm obsessed with Samurai from
Yeah.
1 year ago. I think it's a perfect 10. I would die happy if I was the designer.
Fair enough. Well, we'd all die richer if we had Knizia's design.
Yeah.
Francisco, what's on your table?
I am playing right now All Our Brothers, and it's not on my table, but on the man's cave of my good friend James here in Chicago. So I am playing for Solferino Battle with a different system. It's very similar to Hermann Ludman, but
Okay.
it has some differences.
That sounds like a good time for sure. Ivan?
Okay, I have it by my side here.
Ah, look at that.
I have the box on my side and the map on the other room. But I'm playing Crimea. I don't. There's one Manstein here. I don't know if you know about him.
Of course. It has the most beautiful art, I think, of any game about the Eastern Front. It is a fantastic design. Congratulations.
Yes, Ivan and I made a good work because I have the concept. I wanted 1920 years style.
Yes, right. Art Deco. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's amazing. Well, gentlemen, our time, we've gone a little bit over time, but no big deal. And it has been such a pleasure to see you all and get a chance to talk to you and have listened to your extraordinarily interesting insights on game design. And I look forward to running into you at conventions again. And by all means, if you find yourself in Washington, let's play a game and I'll show you around town. In the meantime, have a good balance of the summer, and thank you again for joining us, and thanks to all of our viewers for watching, and I hope you're having a fantastic SD HistCon Second Front.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.